Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher, after a wild slate of NFL games. Matthew?
And I 100%. And I just want to welcome America and anyone watching around the world, Jay, to what I believe is Connor Rogers Day.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Jets play on Monday Night Football with their season on the line. Mets play in the championship series of the National League, and then LCS tonight, game 2. This is Connor Rogers' day. The fate of Connor Rogers' mood for the next, call it decade, maybe 15 years, rests on tonight and only tonight.
And the Rangers are minus 205 favorites against the Red Wings.
It's a Connor Rogers triple header. And I'll be on no sleep tomorrow, so this could go one of two ways. I can feel like $1 million
tomorrow, or you could just be driving.
Or I won't be sitting here.
Or Kristen shows up to take your job. You
yeah,
know.
There you go.
By the way, open invitation.
I would say open seat.
Open seat.
Tryout.
I'm not convinced if we have the choice between which Rogers we wanted that you would get the nod over Kristen. I'm just saying.
Fair enough.
We'll
see how it goes.
Who do you feel more confident in, Mets or Jets? They're about the same price.
The Mets.
Really? Wow, they're the bigger underdog.
Look at the last 3 weeks. Who would you believe in?
Yeah, well, the Bills don't have Shohei and Mookie. But
that is fair. That is fair. Sean Manaea on the mound. The Mets still have the vibes even after the blowout loss.
Yeah.
A lot in line for the Jets, though.
Yeah,
no
you got to believe, right?
That's right.
There you got to believe. Yeah, there you go.
Well done.
Sure.
We'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much.
If it's an 0-3 night,
I've been a lifelong Jets fan for at least a week.
It's been 80 different Mets memes this season, but we'll go with the one from 1969.
Sure. Hey, let's go Grimace.
Yeah.
What's
there
that?
You go.
There you go.
Grimace.
Yeah, Grimace.
OMG.
OMG.
Hawk Tua threw out a first pitch.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Lynn Sanity.
I'm sure she did. Everything's coming up Hawk Tua.
Yes.
God bless that girl.
What a run.
Yeah.
She's been on.
Mets got walked off, right? When she
that's when people thought it was the end.
That's
one of the 6
endings,
times.
yeah.
Yes.
That young woman has had a Mets-like run this year with her career.
Nobody's capitalized on the 15 minutes more. It's now.
Yes,
15 months.
And I will say, for whatever it's worth, because people handle sudden fame differently, I think for whatever it's worth, I think Haley Welch, the Hawk Tua girl, has handled it about as well as you could.
Stay out of trouble. Take the marketing deals.
Again, for whatever. I follow her on social media. She seems to be a good person. For whatever her social media feed is worth.
Definitely hired a memes creator.
1,000%.
There's memes every day.
Good for her. Listen, life gave her an opportunity. She ran with it. Good for her. Good for her. God bless America.
We got Weekend Warriors and Sunday Scaries for you today. We're going to have our best bets for Monday Night Football, so stick around for those.
We went from Connor Rogers Day to Hawk Tua.
Yeah.
Real quickly.
And now to Sean Tucker.
How does Sean Tucker with the Rotoworld Player news? How quickly things can turn. So let's jump into our Rotoworld Player news. For all that news, you can go to NBCSports.com. Bucs Saints. The story of this game, as Jay alluded to, Matthew, Syracuse legend Sean Tucker.
That's right. Bursting onto the scene. Kind of like the Hawk Tua girl, just all of a sudden enjoying his 15 minutes of fame. Sean Tucker, this is such a great story. Truly a Syracuse legend. By the way, if they'd given him the ball more in the second half, we would have beaten Clemson, but that's another story. Don't get me started on Sean Tucker. I don't know why we went away from him. We absolutely would have, by the way. That would have been a huge upset for the program. There's a reason why that coach is no longer there. Here's what I will say about Sean Tucker. This is somebody kind of that we talked about in the pre-draft process that should have been probably a day 2 pick.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he goes in round 3, or maybe round 4 at the latest. But because there was this heart condition, this pre-existing heart condition that didn't allow him to compete at the combine, he ends up being an undrafted free agent, signs with Tampa Bay, but there's never been a question about the kid's talent.
No, not at all. I mean, he's stuck around on this roster now, waited for his opportunity. He's an explosive playmaker, as we saw. He can make you miss. He can break tackles. He can catch the ball, which was one of my favorite things about him as a prospect, and he just had to wait for opportunity. And Jay, we saw him absolutely take off in this offense. He only had 14 carries and 3 catches, but made the most of them. And Matthew, that's what it was like at Syracuse for Sean Tucker. When he got the ball, it was kind of a look-out feeling because of the explosive play rate.
And it's why we lost to Clemson. Don't get me started.
Yeah. Bucky Irving still played 64% of the snaps. Look, Bucky Irving had a good day.
He had a good day
overall, which is it's going to feel a little bit lukewarm because he didn't have Sean Tucker's day, but he still had a great day overall. I mean, is Rachaad White going to play when he comes back, whenever that is? Because Tucker and Irving both look great. And I think the broader story, too, about just this game and these performances is the Bucs. The Bucs just have an elite offense. They have the 6th-ranked offense by EPA. I think just the kind of more, perhaps modern play calling with Dave Canales and his run-first, run-pass scheme no longer there. I mean, this team is super explosive at the moment. Baker is playing at a really high level as well, which we'll get to.
It's unbelievable. And, so I did the Football Night in America pod last night after Sunday Night Football. And so we did these kind of one-word answers. And so I was asked, give me one word about the Buccaneers' 50-point, total against the Saints and their victory. And my word was resilient. I mean, like in terms of we're resilient because first off, the community of Tampa Bay, all of honestly the west coast of Florida, but specifically around Tampa Bay, what the entire family and that team and organization had to go through, going to New Orleans earlier in the week and practicing. They were lucky to get their families out because there's a lot of people left in Tampa Bay that are not so lucky. And so, and then just when it comes to the game itself. Baker throws a couple of bad picks. All of a sudden they're in a dogfight with a team that they thought, well, hey, we're against a backup quarterback, rookie quarterback, and unfortunately the Saints lose Chris Olave early as well. And so, but they come back, and not only do they win this game, but they just destroy them. I mean, and this is a good Saints defense. This is a good Saints team, and Baker Mayfield is playing, friend of the podcast, by the way, Baker Mayfield. I'm surprised we haven't seen Jay and a picture of Baker with half of my face in it as well. I'm sure that exists.
Of course it's coming.
Well, he did trade him, so it's kind of hard to pull off now.
Yeah, but Jay doesn't care.
That's right. He has no shame.
No shame at all. His social media followers don't understand that you got rid of Baker Mayfield. You traded it to Connor. Once again, it's Connor's day. It's Connor's week. But I feel like I said this to producer Damien. Like I was playing producer Damien in our Dynasty League. We're in a Dynasty League together, and I am in the lucky spot of having it's a Superflex League. I have Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, and Baker Mayfield as my quarterbacks. And this week, I'll just be honest, I benched Baker because I thought, well, Goff against Dallas, that's going to be a shootout, and Kyler's Kyler, and obviously that was the mistake. I still ended up beating producer Damien. Don't worry, everyone. I still managed to crush him like a grape. But I said to Damien, I said, I need a draft day like Post-it note that I just need to put on my hand, Baker Mayfield, no matter what.
Well, on Slap Them Like a Grape, we started the season with 4 legitimate starting quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields. I traded Baker to Connor for Cooper Kupp. I traded Sam Darnold to Connor as well for Russell Wilson and J.K. Dobbins. And now I'm like one Joe Burrow wrist injury away from having no good quarterbacks. So
that's right.
I've gone from 4 great quarterbacks to potentially 1.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure Fields, I mean, we'll talk about
that
Fields,
game
but
in a second.
He was a fine. But it can change quickly with the quarterbacks. But no, I agree with everything that you said, Matthew. And this Bucs team, we forget that like last year, going into last season, I believe they were the favorite to have the worst record in football last season. Yeah. And then they win the division. They're 4-2 now. They have this blockbuster primetime game against the Ravens on Monday Night Football where they go to 5-2, have a better record than Baltimore, and really put themselves in position to get a top 2 seed. So it's a great story overall. Very happy for Baker Mayfield, we appreciate anyone who comes on the show, but Baker, I thought he was really candid. He was really great to speak to, and I'm really happy that he's doing well.
He's an awesome guy. If you've ever met him, I've interviewed him twice. He is an easy guy to root for. There's not a surprise to me that the Buccaneers have rallied around him and that he's a true leader. He's, again, playing at elite level. Chris Godwin, we haven't even gotten to him. George the Greek just absolutely trying to slap me around like a grape with Chris Godwin in the League of Assholes. Like I'm hanging on by a thread there. We'll talk about that in a second. But Godwin, has now scored in 4 of his 6 games so far this year. He's got a 28% target share this season. It's weird. Godwin, in a game in which Mike Evans didn't do anything, but just they were able to run the ball so much. It's super weird. They put up 50, and Mike Evans does nothing for, of course, my Live at Noon at the Cock, whereas George the Greek's Chris Godwin, just unbelievable year for him. Moving into the slot has done wonders for him. Moving back into the slot, I should say. On the season, he's the wide receiver 3 in points per game. He's had 3 different games with over 20 or more fantasy points. He broke the slate, as it were, and you see this tweet from Next Gen Stats.
Yeah, Chris Godwin gained 105 of his 125 receiving yards after contact across 11 receptions. So Godwin, just as we showed the play before, the big play, and obviously a lot of the yards after contact was the short out he caught, and he ran through 3 different players. We got to hear from Godwin after the game on that exact play and why he's been so good with the ball in his hands this year. Take a listen.
You know, we had a shot called downfield that they had covered up. They got me the ball in a good, and a good timing. Make the cut back on, the backer flowing out. And then from there, I'm just trying to get as much yards as I can to end up being perfect timing, breaking the 2 tackles, and I see nobody in front of me. I'm like, I can't get caught. That's the only thing going through my mind. And it was a pretty exhilarating play. It felt really good, especially at that moment in the game. Like it was a big moment for us. So that's the biggest thing for me is trying to make some big plays when we really need them.
Yeah, Jay. I mean, you hear him is that when his number's called, and the thing is in this offense, it's so narrow with him and Evans, with Baker Mayfield. He's been taking advantage of it, and he's just healthy this year. Yeah,
he is. He looks super explosive. He's younger than you realize as well, Chris Godwin. He feels like he's been a guy who's been around a decade, but he's still in his late 20s. I think the thing with this game, to me, this is a Liam Cohen game. Here's the story here, because Baker Mayfield, I believe on passes that went over 10 yards in the air, Baker was 1 for 10 with 2 interceptions. And they scored 51 points, which just shows the amount of yak that is coming out of this scheme and just the level that Godwin is playing at in particular. This is an offense just firing on all cylinders at the moment.
You see it there on your screen, the top fantasy performers of Week 6 as we head into Monday Night Football. Chris Godwin at 1, Sean Tucker at 2, Baker Mayfield at 5. 3 of the top 5 fantasy point scorers in Week 6 as we head into Monday Night Football are from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And here's the weird thing. We'll get more into this tomorrow. But I guess you have to pick up Sean Tucker, but
That's
I'm not.
Weird, right?
But it's weird because, again, first off, their upcoming schedule is not easy. Home to Baltimore, home to Atlanta, at Kansas City, home to San Francisco. Only the Falcons do you feel good about being able to run the ball against, right? I mean, the Chiefs have a pretty good run defense. The Niners do. Obviously, Baltimore, that's a real strength for them. And also, just because we all are like, whoa, Sean Tucker, doesn't mean that Liam Cohen, that Todd Bowles are going to be like, hey, Rachaad White, you suddenly lost your job. Yep. Probably the best case scenario is it's now a 3-headed monster, right? That Sean Tucker has earned some playing time off this. Yeah. But there's a scenario where Rachaad White has just been Wally pipped, as it were, and it's gonna be Tucker and Irving, who to the eye test look like the best 2 running backs on the Buccaneers, and I don't think it's particularly close. But it's also like, Todd Bowles is an old school guy, and Rachaad White was the veteran and led them last year, and Rachaad White's a young guy. He's a second year, right? A second or third year player.
Yeah,
third year player. So I mean, it's sort of weird to know, like there's a chance that Sean Tucker goes back to getting 0 snaps next week if Rachaad White is healthy.
The other issue too is just the Bucs. They throw the ball a ton. They're top 3 in the NFL in pass rate over expected. So that's just another thing that works against Sean Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be picked up, but I wouldn't blow a ton of fat. I don't know. Unless we were to find out Rachaad White's injury is more serious than we think. I don't know. Well, it's a great day. It's a great day. Go Cuse. And as you can imagine, the entire city of Tampa Bay, led by Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, drinks for free. Good for you guys. Thrilled for you guys. Absolutely.
A massive, massive win for Tampa Bay as a whole. So they drink free at the happy hour bar. We move over to the Commanders at the Ravens. Led by the King once again. Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. After the game, Henry was hounded about this play, that play, this play, but he's just trying to stay humble through all the success. Take a listen.
Approaching every week of focus on being 1-0, keep pushing each other, keep working hard, and let us transition to the game. But it's a humble approach for sure.
The toss left, it's kind of the icing run there at the end of this game. It seems like it's having a lot of success.
Be quiet. Be quiet. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I think it was a handoff. It wasn't a toss.
When they get into the red zone, everybody in the stadium knows you're going to get the ball.
Stop.
How are you able?
What?
How are you able to score?
Credit to everybody blocking. They make my job easy. It's not just me. I can't get the ball run through 11 people.
It's just another day of the office for Derrick Henry.
By the way, I actually think he could run through 11 people. Yeah, he just said there it's not just me, they're all black. I actually think he could run through 11 people.
Run through 7 or 8 times.
There were 2 schools of thoughts coming into the preseason about Derrick Henry. There were some that were like, he's too old, he gets injured, he's one-dimensional, he's not really part of the passing game. And then there were other schools of thought, and I was in this school of thought. He was on the preseason love list, which was like, he's never been on an offense like this. He's been in Tennessee where he's seen 8-man fronts his entire life among one of the worst offensive lines in football, at least, especially over the last couple of years. And so now he goes to Baltimore, and whatever you think the Ravens' offensive line is this year, it's going to be an improvement over Tennessee from last year. And oh, by the way, he's got Lamar Jackson. Like, he's never played with a quarterback as dynamic, even when Ryan Tannehill at his peak had some rushing ability. He didn't have what Lamar has, which is just incredibly special in the NFL. And so the thought was like, hey, like some combination of like Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, and Melvin Gordon, and Keaton Mitchell scored 20 rushing touchdowns on this team last year. So what could King Henry do in this offense? And so we didn't predict 20 touchdowns, but we thought double digits, 12 to 15 was certainly within range. And certainly, I mean, we're pacing towards that with Derrick Henry as well. He's, God bless King Henry, because he's keeping my team in the League of Assholes alive as well. He's scored in every single game this season. He's got 8 total touchdowns already. We're only in week 6, folks. And 3 of the past 4 games, he's in 25 or more fantasy points. He currently leads the NFL in rushing. The only negative to Derrick Henry, there's always the risk of injury, but like that's true with any NFL player. It's a violent sport. And just he sometimes gets game scripted out. If they get down big, but feels like after an early season stumble, the Ravens have sort of found their footing here. And it's hard to see them getting blown out of a game again. And so as long as they're in positive or even neutral game script, Derrick Henry's going to get his. And if you were drafting today, is he the number 1 player? Is it still Saquon? It's a tough game last week for Saquon, but like,
think of the reliability of Derrick Henry.
Just every single week, the floor is so high.
Yes, the floor is so high. The crown is yours, Derrick Henry.
Is he win Offensive Player of the Year at this pace?
I think so. I think if he just stays healthy, he's like plus 150 now.
Right.
Like I think this is like, in a way, it feels unsustainable that he keeps on breaking off these huge runs, but I don't think it is, because he's Derrick Henry, and you watch like the film room stuff of the way that Lamar Jackson impacts the second level of the defense. Like these linebackers, they have to honor Lamar Jackson as a runner, and it just means that Derrick Henry has a full head of steam going up against the safety backpedaling. Like, what do you think is going to happen? So I think this is somewhat sustainable. It's so weird that he could be the number 1 player in fantasy while playing 50% of the snaps. But that's basically what he's doing at the moment. It's just that he has such an incredible power to produce when he does carry the ball, and he is getting the heavy bulk of the carries. There will be there is going to be a random game where Derrick Henry is 14 for 56 and with a touchdown, and that's just his random game. But when they do have game script in their favor, which by the way they're going to, because I think they're the best team in football right now, he's just going to continue to be a monster.
Yeah, and by the way, the success of that run game opens up things for the passing game underneath. So Zay Flowers has a 36% target share in this game. He's now had at least a 25% target share in all but 1 game so far this season. He had 2 quiet games there a couple of weeks ago, but ultimately Zay Flowers, I think, is clearly the number 1 passing option in this offense that is just humming at a really high level. It's going to be what a great game next week at Tampa Bay as well. We did see the return of Mark Andrews here, Connor, but I'm sort of the mind of like, felt like so he gets the touchdown, great, fine. But his biggest play was basically a busted coverage as well. He had a 16% target share for all the like, oh, he's back, whatever.
He wasn't more back.
No, it was 2 plays. He still played basically 51% of the snaps. He only had a 16% target share. Like, if I've hung on, I will say this: if I have Mark Andrews, if I hung tough through this, and now after this performance, I would be trying to sell high. I still want out of the Mark Andrews business.
Yeah, the snap rate's the biggest concern, right? 51% of the snaps for a team that so much of their touchdown equity goes to Henry and Lamar Jackson. This feels more of a blip on the radar than a pattern of success going forward.
Yeah, I agree. This is kind of a strange game because it was like exactly on script, right? Sure. The line pushed, a 7-point win. The total was basically right on as well. Daniels was awesome. Lamar was awesome. Henry was awesome. Terry McLaurin was really good. Zay Flowers was probably the outlier along with Andrews a bit. But yeah, I still think the only guy you feel comfortable with in the passing attack is Flowers.
And Jayden Daniels was very good. Top 10 quarterback finish, QB8.
My storyline, Connor, I know you missed it. My storyline on Fantasy Football pregame Sunday morning was, can Jayden Daniels stand up? Because he's beaten up on some bad defenses. He's been great. He's been the story and the hottest quarterback in fantasy and in the NFL. But now he's on the road at Baltimore against a guy that he gets compared to a lot, and a 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. And can he withstand the pressure both from a real-life NFL perspective, but also could he put up fantasy points against, what we think is one of the better defenses in the NFL? And the answer is Yes, 21 fantasy points. He doesn't have a ton of success on the ground, just 6 for 22.
And that's the Ravens. They're going to take that away from you.
1,000%. But still finishes the week as we head into Monday Night Football. He'll be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He's QB8 right now. Even if Rodgers and Allen have huge games, he'll still be a top 10 fantasy quarterback for the week. 4th straight game with at least 20 or more fantasy points. That's tied for the most among all players. 4th straight game with at least 280 or more total yards. We took the over on Papa Shot, or Propa Shot, I should say, on pregame, and he hits that as well. McLaurin is the big beneficiary as well. Top 3 so far, McLaurin, in end zone targets so far this season. He's averaging 18.7 fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks. He's now scored in 3 of the past 4 games. He's Terry McScoring. That's always been one of the challenges with McLaurin throughout his career, is just no touchdowns, just because his quarterback play was so bad. But they're finding him not only early and often, but in high leverage situations. And to me, guys, I want to ask you guys this about Jayden Daniels, but I thought, even though this was a loss, and there's no such thing truly as a good loss in the NFL, but as a Commanders fan, I actually feel more encouraged about the team after this loss than I have about, okay, fine, you beat Arizona, you beat a broken down Browns team, but the Ravens are a heavyweight. The Ravens have a very legit shot to be in the Super Bowl this year, and the Commanders, even though they lost by a touchdown, they answered drives. Jayden Daniels, believe it or not, actually had a higher QBR in this game than Lamar Jackson, and I thought Lamar Jackson played really well.
Yeah.
This is a team that blew out the Cowboys. Not the Cowboys. They blew out the Bills. They smoked the Bills. That's what I meant. Sorry. I got it confused with all the other teams that have blown out the Cowboys.
It's easy to do right now.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, but I mean, they smoked the Bills, right? And so I thought, I was encouraged. But I'm a homer.
They lost, the Eagles won, and the Commanders moved into favorite to win the NFC East after yesterday, just on the basis of the strength of their performance and how meh the Eagles were overall.
Right, and the Giants had a chance to kind of right their season, and they fell short. Things went right for the Commanders right now, and even in a win. We'll get to this at some point this week, but Nick Sirianni just does not make things easy for the Eagles. You have to feel really good about the Commanders right now in this division.
I do. I feel thrilled. Dallas, obviously, they've got massive problems as well. So,
Carolina next week.
Hail the Commanders, hail victory. This upcoming stretch will be really interesting. Home to Carolina, okay, good. Then home to Chicago. That'll be
Caleb Williams squaring off his must-see
and they're going to have 2 weeks to prepare because the Bears are on a bye out of the London game. Then they're at New York, at the Giants, and then home to Pittsburgh. So 2 of the next 4 really tough defenses with the Bears and the Steelers. And hopefully, listen, the Giants also play.
Giants defense looks good.
Giants defense looks good. Carolina's no slouch, but so this next 4.
They're slouchy.
A little slouchy, but whatever. I mean, anyway. But yeah, that's a game they need to win. They need to win the Carolina Panther game next week.
Texans Patriots. Houston handles their business in Drake Maye's debut. Although we'll get to Drake Maye in just a second. The real story of this game was, Matthew, the Texans' offense was right on script. Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell's best game of the year, and Joe Mixon going for over 100 yards in his return.
So when Joe Mixon's built healthy this year, he's getting 88% of the goal-to-go rushes. He's getting 83% of the red zone attempts as well. He's now had at least 25 fantasy points in both of his full games this season, 130 or more scrimmage yards in both. And even without Nico Collins, they didn't miss a beat. 4th straight game with at least a 22% target share for Stefon Diggs. He's had at least 14 fantasy points in 5 of 6 games this season. And one of my shot-for-shots on pregame was, hey, Tank Dell's coming back. We got a lot of Tank Dell questions. We're like, you got to believe. Let's go Mets, Grimace, all of that.
Tank
Dell as well. Yeah. Anyway, look, what's positive, though, 29% target share for Tank Dell. Season highs for him, targets, catches, yards, and fantasy points, Jay. I don't know, to me, he looked like Tank Dell.
Stroud was looking at him so much in this game. I felt like every drop back, he was looking towards Tank.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a over-indexing on Tank, which is a good thing. I think for the next 3 weeks, while Nico Collins is out, Tank Dell must start, Stefon Diggs must start. This all of a sudden, I think, is a fairly simplified offense for fantasy purposes. You're just starting Diggs, Dell, Stroud, Mixon every week, Dalton Schultz if you don't have a better option.
I had hoped that Xavier Hutchinson might do something. He was a desperation play for me. He didn't. He was out there a little bit, but he just didn't do anything, Connor.
Good blocker.
Good blocker.
A lot of the Joe Mixon runs, Xavier Hutchinson was helping out, but that doesn't help you in fantasy.
Yeah. Now, we'll see how this offense fares next week. They're at Green Bay. Lambeau, a tough place to play. Packers, a really legitimate defense, so going to be more of a test than the Patriots here, but certainly good to see Tank Dell get back on track. Joe Mixon looking like Joe Mixon again. Other side of the ball here, Connor, I have my own thoughts, but I'm really curious, what did you see out of Drake Maye in his debut?
Very up and down. It felt like he was a little erratic out of the gate, missed some throws, some bad interceptions, but he also made some plays that this offense has left on the field week after week after week that it leaves you wondering, why they didn't go to him early. I know they wanted to be careful with him, but this deep throw down the field was just beautifully dropped in the bucket right there over the top of the coverage. This is what Drake Maye gives you. He's going to give you more variance, as we saw with the turnovers and some of the sacks, but he's also going to give you a chance to not only push the ball down the field, but run away from pressure a little bit. So, listen, you like the stat line in fantasy. I know the Patriots want to see him clean some things up, but let's be honest, guys. He's not working with a lot out there. It's a patchwork offensive line. They don't have a lot of skill talent. I think Drake Maye made the most out of what he had in a polite way.
A bad offensive line that lost David Andrews. It was bad with Andrews.
They're starting like 4 backups of a bad unit.
Correct, exactly. I thought fantasy-wise, what he gave you is what you'd hoped for, and you just talked about it, right? He was aggressive pushing the ball down the field, and he gave you some points with his legs. He's not scared to duck and run, and so I think those two things suddenly give you. I do think he's on now the QB2 radar. I do think he's legitimate, especially, by the way, he might be in others receiving votes on the love list this upcoming week. They're at Jacksonville. Feels like you could start whoever you want against the Jaguars here, Jay. And his inconsistency, but at least that upside, gives you some hope, I think, for Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry, who had some nice games here.
Yeah, definitely. Pop Douglas in particular, he gets the 9 targets, 6 for 92 and the touchdown. I think the key with Maye is just that he can add those extra 4 points running the ball, and he's probably going to run in some touchdowns as well. He goes 5 for 38 in this game. And yeah, the line is bad, but the line, it did hold up on the perfectly blocked touchdown down the right sideline. So I think with Maye, I think the word that you used, Connor, variance, that's the key thing. At least he gives his offense some upside and some life. With the deep ball and with his ability to run. And yeah, Jacksonville, that might be the best matchup in football right now because they're the best combination of just bad and also it seems like they've just completely given up.
They have.
And they said as much. Cisco said as much.
Cisco said
it's brutal. Brutal. And a guy that's played pretty well throughout his career there, he came out and said that. I think it was directed at a lot of different people.
And I feel bad. I don't want to be one of these guys that says one thing that I like Doug Peterson.
It's not all. It can't all be Doug Peterson.
No, it is this is somebody that he got the Jags to a playoff and a playoff victory, right? And he got the Eagles a Super Bowl win. He's not a bad coach. I think Doug Peterson. I feel bad for him. Can't imagine him ending the season in Jacksonville, but whatever. I'm a Doug Peterson fan. I like the guy, and he's always been good to me in terms of interviews and everything like that. So I'm, not sitting here, bagging on him. But to your point, it does feel like a change. Some sort of change is coming. They've quit. That team has quit.
A bad day at the office for the Jags. A maybe worst day at the office in Dallas on Jerry Jones' birthday. We mentioned Matthew mixed up a blowout with the Cowboys earlier because
everyone blows out the Cowboys.
Because it's really easy to do that right now. The Lions manhandled this team. It was never a game. Never a game.
It was. Is this the third or fourth straight game they've given up a 40-burger at home? I mean, right? They gave the Saints, the Packers in the playoffs last year as well. I mean, it was just, the Lions did whatever they want. They were truly slapping them like grapes.
It was kind of beautiful to watch, to be honest. Awesome. It was to see what Dan Campbell was pulling. It was unbelievable. I'm so happy that he did all of that. Just screw it, whatever. It's not just about the wins and losses. It's about making a statement. It's about paying that team back because they got completely screwed out of a victory that would have given them the 2 seed last year on the Decker call.
It was a little weird that they had some beautiful trick plays, and you're up 40. Do you really need to be throwing out the
Ben Johnson emptied the bag.
Right? We're going to do the hook and ladder with Panay Sewell. What are we doing? But God bless. And it's, I don't know. All right, I'm trying to think of what to talk about it from a fantasy perspective. Here's what I will say. First off, the Lions have a good defense, but one of the problems with the Cowboys this entire year is that they are a one-dimensional offense. They've not been able to truly effectively run the ball. They had a little bit of success last week against Pittsburgh when Rico Dowdle got going a little bit, but it's not like he's been explosive. And so when they get into these negative game scripts, when they get into scenarios like this where it's suddenly their one-dimensional offense has to only be one-dimensional, you can just sort of tee off on them. And it's too easy. It's too easy to do. CeeDee Lamb deserves better. This is Dak Prescott's worst fantasy game since Week 11 of 2021 at Kansas City. Season lows in completion percentage and on-target rate. He's now been under 17 fantasy points in 5 of 6 games this season, including his last 3. We said this a few weeks ago, and I got a lot of grief about this, but like, he doesn't run, and there are pocket passers in the NFL that are performing at a much higher level. The Baker Mayfields, the Jordan Love. I mean, I don't know that I consider Love more of a. I mean, because he gets you a little bit with his legs,
but yesterday he just dropped back and chucked it all over the field.
1,000%. I mean, but whatever. Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow,
Jared Goff,
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I mean, Burrow had a bad fantasy day yesterday, really. Although the touchdown run saved him. We'll talk about that. But but like, right. Just my point is that if you're going with a non-mobile quarterback, like a pocket passer, there's a lot better options out there than Dak Prescott right now. He's merely a QB2 in fantasy. You're still rolling CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson out there when they're active. They're on a bye next week, but like when they get back, because of their talent and the lack of depth at the position, especially tight end. But man, oh man, like this is. If you're a Cowboys fan and you see the jersey of my buddy Aites back there, this is soul searching time. This is look in the mirror time. This is. Wow,
you seem very happy, Matthew.
Hail the Commanders, hail victory. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like the Cowboys. Everyone knows that. I mean, I love Aites. I love CeeDee Lamb. He's my buddy.
They're going to be underdogs in their next 5 games.
After the bye, they're at San Francisco, then they're at Atlanta, then they're home to Philadelphia. Look at that upcoming. Like they got 2 weeks to figure this out.
Houston at Washington. Like this could get.
This could get
ugly. It's already very bad.
This could get ugly quick.
They're 3-3 somehow. They got Micah Parsons back, maybe the best defensive player in football.
In fairness, that's the argument, right? They didn't have DeMarcus Lawrence. They didn't have Micah Parsons in this game. They were banged up on defense, but still, even with backups, you can't give up 40 at home.
That's the key. You got to be competitive or have a pulse.
And honestly, the Lions left some points on the field. There were a couple of plays that were called back.
Right.
I mean, like
could have been 60.
Could have been 60. Look, we talked about this Lions offense on fantasy football pregame, and we thought that the Lions especially would be able to run on the ball, run on the Cowboys, because a lot of teams have been able to run on the Cowboys, and we thought Dave Montgomery, off of signing the big contract, would once again get in the end zone. And I feel like Dave Montgomery is kind of like Derrick Henry without the publicity. Dave Montgomery has scored in every game so far this season. They've only played 5 because they had a bye early, but he scored in every game this season. He's had at least 15 fantasy points in every game this season. He's got 11 goal-to-go rushes this season, including at least 2 in 5 of the 6 games. And, Monty is completely underrated.
Yeah, well, you were all over it before the game. You rode with Monty.
I did.
As we do a little flashback to fantasy football pregame. Thank you, David Montgomery.
Oh, wow, we have tape on this? I did not know.
Roll the tape.
Dave Montgomery's got the new big contract. Congratulations to Dave Montgomery. He's been nothing short of phenomenal. He was on the preseason love list. He was on the preseason love list last year as well. He always gets forgotten. No one seems to ever appreciate it. But I say, Dave Montgomery, one of the most underrated players in fantasy football and the NFL, scores for the 5th straight time. Worth noting, the Cowboys are tied for the 2nd most rushing touchdowns allowed this game. If you're somebody who enjoys betting on anytime touchdowns over at the DraftKings, Dave Montgomery, I think, scores for the 5th straight time. Here we go. I sound
and that he did.
That clip, by the way. I did not realize how drunk I sounded in that clip. You know what I mean?
11 a.m. in Stanford.
That must have been the 3rd shot of the day of that one. But Monty comes through, and I don't think he's viewed as an RB1, but I think he is.
In this landscape, it feels like he should be.
They just run the ball so well. It seems like they were kind of scuffling the first 2 weeks of the season, the Lions. The offensive line, maybe they were dealing with some injuries, but they seem all the way back. The only other thing out of this game is I think it might be time to get a little bit concerned about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, I think he's just not getting the volume of targets. This is a more democratic, egalitarian offense than last season, where now, like, Tim Patrick is getting involved, and Khalif Raymond and Sam Laporta has the touchdown on the trick play. Like, there's a lot of dudes, and also they run the ball a ton, and they're also really good, so they're going to be leading in games. So I don't know really what Amon-Ra St. Brown's path is to being, the top 3, top 4 wide receiver that we thought he could be.
He's more of a wide receiver 2 than the wide receiver 1 that he was drafted as. And, like, listen, as long as I'm victory lapping here, allow me just also to, own that I had Jameson Williams on the hate list this week. Dallas really good in theory at defending the deep pass. They weren't Sunday against the Lions. They weren't good at anything. But to your point about Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, the emergence of Jameson Williams, yet another reason why that Amon-Ra is not getting as much volume as he needs to. So good for JMO for using my hate list listing as motivation. I'm sure that's what it was, and showing me and everyone up. Good game for the Lions all around. One pride. Lion up.
Yes.
Fur up.
Fur up.
Fur up. That's
Hear
what it is.
hear the
Fur
roar.
up. Hear the roar. That too as well. But fur up, I think.
Restore the roar. Yeah.
Restore the roar. That's I think the roar's been restored.
It has been restored.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
Thanks
in
to
full
Dan
roar
Campbell.
now.
Yeah.
Brett Holmes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think fur up is the winner. I think that's probably the best one of them all.
Our last
We'll see.
game
You'll see.
recap.
You'll see Detroit will rally around that. Fur
The
up.
Falcons take care of business
Claw
against the
up? What about
Panthers.
claw up?
By the way, I hope Aiden Hutchinson gets better. As fast as possible.
That was
Yeah.
awful.
Brutal.
That was
brutal.
That's yeah.
Low
You know what
moment
the
of a great
insane
game.
thing is that he got hurt because he got to the quarterback too quickly. Like that's how well he was playing, and that's what a kind of a zone he was in. He was defensive player of the year favorite, justifiably so. So hopefully he can come back for next season.
Yeah, I mean, awful injury. Much more of an NFL story than a fantasy storyline. The one thing I will say is that from what I know about Aiden Hutchinson, that while he won't be able to play for the Lions, he's still going to contribute. He will still be there. He is still one of the leaders of that team. Yeah. He will still be on the sideline. He will still be among the people, I believe, joining in fur up. Yeah. It's
You're
work in
you're
progress.
trying to make it work. It's all right.
It's a work in progress.
It's atrocious.
Our last one here.
Anyway, we are a pro Aiden Hutchinson team show here, and much love to him.
Falcons-Panthers. Falcons take care of their business, and it was on the heels of their running backs, Jay. Not only Bijan Robinson getting 95 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, but Tyler Allgeier gets more carries and tops 100 yards.
Bijan Robinson, the greatest insurance back in fantasy football history. He gets out-carried to your point, Connor, 18-15. The issue is the snap rate. He's played 56% of the snaps. That was 80% in week 1. It's trending the wrong way. It's going down week by week. And now he gets the 2 touchdowns. He has the monster fantasy day. But look, they're playing the Panthers. They're not going to get to play the Panthers every week. Bijan Robinson's not going to put up 25 fantasy points on playing 56% of the snaps. So, look, I think you still have to start him every week. But he is now a high-end RB2. And I think Allgeier now becomes startable in deeper leagues with the amount that he's playing. I mean,
Allgeier was on my love list this week and others receiving votes. We talked about it on the Love Hate show because he is getting a decent amount of volume. 4 of his past 5 games, he's gotten at least 9 touches. We like this Falcons offense. And so, yes, in 12-team or deeper leagues, he's very much flex viable. And by the way, very quickly, since week 2, Drake London is the 5th best wide receiver in fantasy. Detective Drake London has almost a 30% target share over the stretch. He has also very quietly scored in 4 or 5 games. The Falcons' offense is humming, and they host the Seahawks next week.
Yep. Don't think you'd be able to do it, but if you could trade Amon-Ra St. Brown for Drake London, I'd try and make that trade. Drake London projects going better forward.
I think that's fair. But I think that's a fair trade. I think that's. But
I want Drake London there.
But I agree with that analysis. I think you can make that deal.
Things aren't great for the Panthers. The good news is Andy Dalton is keeping Deontay Johnson fantasy viable, Matthew. As you said when this change happened, Deontay gets 10 targets, catches 6 of them, 78 yards, and the touchdown.
He leads the NFL with end zone targets. That's always been one of those things with Deontay Johnson. Why can't he score more? Well, I mean, Andy Dalton keeps looking for him. In fact, 29% target share with the red rifle under center. He's had at least double-digit targets in 3 out of 4 games, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game with Dalton under center. Deontay Johnson is a legit top 15-ish wide receiver in fantasy as long as Andy Dalton keeps his job. And I just don't know how I know it wasn't a great day at the office for Dalton, but he's just so much better than Bryce Young in terms at this point. He gives them a chance.
Let's take a look at some of the injuries we're tracking out of the weekend that we will keep you updated on throughout the week. Travis Etienne with the hamstring. Tajay Spears and Jerome Ford also had hamstrings. Elijah Moore with the ribs injury. Marvin Harrison Jr. left the game very early with a concussion. Same for Chris Olave, unfortunately. Dontavian Wicks with a shoulder. Quentin Johnson with an ankle. Hayden Hurst with a groin injury. And Dallas Goedert left the game with a hamstring. So plenty of noteworthy injuries that could drag on for at least another week here, Matthew.
For sure. And Chris Olave, I just want to point him out. We'll talk more about this tomorrow as the week goes on. But Olave, just because the Saints have the Thursday night game. So the idea that it can happen, but it's highly unlikely that Olave clears the concussion protocol by Thursday night. We expect Spencer Rattler to start as well. So that's going to be that'll be a tough game for the Saints. Spencer
Fire up
Rattler.
Bub Means.
Bub Means, exactly, baby.
Bub Means time. We're taking our first break. When we're back, Weekend Warriors, Sunday Scaries, right after this.
I've been seeing it well. And that starts, throughout the whole week, watching film, getting there in practice, talking to the coaches, players, and things like that. So I think seeing it well, I think the comfort level of just, like I've talked about before, getting back to playing football and, where I need to be, eyes need to be, getting back comfortable of just having that feel for the game. Obviously, you study, you watch, and do all these other things, but once the ball snaps, you gotta have that post snap read and know what you have to do.
Weekend Warriors, that was Caleb Williams, who is Mr. Weekend Warrior right now. He couldn't miss in London, Matthew. Completed 23 of 29 for 226 yards, but the 4 touchdowns is what really stood out in this one.
4 touchdowns that, by the way, could have been 5 because DJ Moore gets stopped on like the 6-inch line on a pass from Caleb Williams. He also adds points with his legs, 56 rushing yards, including 1 long run. It's his 3rd game already, though, with 30 or more rushing yards. I think he's running more than people might have thought in the pros. 97% of his passes were on target. Now, he was playing the Jaguars, but still. And they're on a bye this week. But I think Caleb Williams is a borderline top 12 play the rest of the way. He's been terrific over the last 3 weeks, only getting better. It was nice to see him get Keenan Allen involved in this game, as long with Cole Kmet.
Yeah, Cole Kmet caught all 5 of his targets for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Another quarterback that makes the list, Jay, Bo Nix, completes 19 of 33 for 216, 2 touchdowns. He also rushed 6 times for 61 yards. The rushing makes Bo Nix potentially fantasy viable in Superflex leagues.
Yeah, one of the great dichotomies here between fantasy and real life, because Bo Nix wasn't great, but he gives you the rushing, and that's the key here. He's the number 12 quarterback on the season in fantasy. He's ahead of guys like Kirk Cousins, obviously guys like Trevor Lawrence as well. So Bo Nix, he is a viable Superflex quarterback, like a high-end QB2 with the rushing.
I don't know that I'll go that far. It was comeback mode. I actually think the Broncos defense is pretty good, so because they'll probably be competitive more often than they were against the Chargers. But yes, he is absolutely a QB2. He's QB2 viable for sure.
Yep. He's got the Saints, Panthers, Ravens, and Chiefs. You probably are only going to start him in one of those 4 games.
I just think like he's QB2 now, QB12 now on the season, and he should get better as the season goes on in theory. And I don't think the rushing is really going anywhere.
Yeah, against those teams, though, I'm concerned. That's my concern.
A little nervous as well. But just to wrap up Kmet very quickly, since week 3, 19% target share was his highest since week 3. But he now has at least 55 receiving yards in 3 of the past 4, and feels like he's a good part of this offense. I do think Cole Kmet, especially given the position, top 12 tight end the rest of the way.
Yeah. I'm going to retract my high-end QB2.
I think that's right.
We'll allow that.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown also getting it done, Matthew. He caught 6 of his 9 targets, 169 yards. He gets, most importantly, the touchdown.
Yeah, he looked like A.J. Brown, right? On the season, he's averaging 23.5 fantasy points per game. He's had 100 yards and a touchdown in both games this season. We're still waiting for the Eagles to put it all together because Barkley didn't have a great game here, but both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith looked good. Jalen Hurts looked better. It helps when you're playing Cleveland, and it helps when you get A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson back. Let's mention that as well. But yeah, A.J. Brown, right back to being the wide receiver 1 you drafted him as.
Jay, your guy Najee Harris with his best game of the season, over 20 fantasy points, a lot of it on the ground.
Yeah, it's time to sell high on Najee.
Thank you. Exactly.
He only did it on 14 carries. He had the amazing touchdown down the left sideline, but this Raiders team is just broken at the moment. Jaylen Warren was back. That's a problem for Najee. If Justin Fields is going to keep his job as well, that's probably bad news for Najee, just in terms of another guy stealing rushing attempts from him. So I would try and sell high now on Najee if you can.
It's fair. I will say their upcoming schedule, they play the Jets next week, then the Giants, bye at Washington. 3 of their next 3 opponents, none of them have great run defenses. So if you can't sell Najee high, I do think he'll be useful. But to your point, Jaylen Warren is coming. But that's a team that wants to run, So, and of course, I had to play against Najee. Like the one game he scores. Anyway, don't get me started.
Evan Engram with the big game in London, Matthew. He caught all 10 of his targets for 102 yards.
Yeah, was also on the hate list. That did not work out well for me as well. I thought first game back, maybe they'll ease him back. No, they certainly didn't. Bears had actually been pretty good against tight ends prior to this, but he led all tight ends in catches and receiving yards in week 8. He's tied for the most targets among tight ends in week 6, 29% target share. Yeah, again, in a game on a team that will be in negative game script almost entirely, it's great to see Evan Engram come back with a huge game here, 10 for 102. They play the Patriots, the Packers, at Philadelphia, home to Minnesota. So a nice schedule for him, given game script and yeah, that was great to see. Picking up right where he left off. A lot of targets.
Jay, while Devin Singletary's been out, Tyrone Tracy has shined. 17 carries, only 50 yards, but he gets the touchdown. Most importantly, the former college wide receiver, 57 receiving yards on 6 receptions.
That's the key, and I think that implies that he may have a strong role going forward, even when Devin Singletary comes back. That was the best performance on offense I've seen from a team that only scored 7 points. Like, they should have scored more than 7 points. It's not like they set the world on fire, but they had a 47% success rate on the night. I think this Giants offense remains somewhat competent with Daniel Jones at quarterback, and Tyrone Tracy can benefit.
100%. He's been our guy all along. I'll just say very quickly back to Evan Engram. While I am buying his performance, I am not buying Gabe Davis. I know he had the big day at the office, but also dropped a bad one. I'm not buying Gabe Davis.
Sunday Scaries, and a tough one to start with, Matthew. Kyler Murray, Mr. Ride or Die. Just a bad day for Arizona's offense. It started with Marv going out with a concussion.
I mean, that's part of it, obviously, losing Marvin Harrison early. But what's so weird is that part of the argument for Kyler Murray being ride or die was they'd be negative game script a lot, and he'd be running a lot, right? And so, but that's just not happening. He gets only 14 rushing yards in this game, and despite the fact they were down big and early, they just couldn't get it going. He's had under 15 rushing yards in 2 of the past 3, only 1 game this season with multiple touchdown passes. I get it. And there's more to be discussed about my ride or die. But listen, ride or die is ride or die. They're home to the Chargers, at Miami, home to Chicago, home to the Jets. So the schedule doesn't get easier either. But I'm still hanging tough. Kyler Murray's never been less than a top 10 fantasy quarterback on a points per game basis throughout his career. I don't think that starts now. I'm hanging tough with him. And by the way, a number of big name quarterbacks have not done, well, Josh Allen's been off had 2 bad games in a row, anyway. So,
tough game for James Conner with game script, just 7 carries for 24 yards. Saquon Barkley, though, probably the bigger story. 18 carries, 47 yards, just the 2 catches for 7 yards. He just didn't look good. I don't know how he didn't pick up that 3rd and 1 that almost really hurt them. Jordan Mailata also on crutches after the game,
That's
one of the
scary.
best left tackles in football. So not looking amazing for the Eagles offense at the moment, outside, of course, of AJ.
On the other hand, Saquon Barkley at the Giants next week, revenge game. So you're going to hang tough with Barkley, but certainly tough day at the office for him. Somebody that you're not hanging tough with is Calvin Ridley. However, 3rd player in the last 10 years to have 8 or more targets and 0 receptions on this game. He has yet to see an end zone or red zone target. He's averaging under 2 fantasy points per game in the last 3. It's bizarre. 1.8 fantasy points per game in the last 3, despite getting 14 targets over that stretch. So I just, welcome to Dumpsville. Just that, the throws are going deep. They're not connecting with him. No easy stuff. 60% of his targets are in deep passes. Again, he's too talented. There'll be better days, but I just don't know where you can consistently, if he's on my waiver wire, I'm not going out and grabbing him. I don't know where you would feel comfortable starting him and feeling like there's consistency there.
Not until Mason Rudolph plays and shows you something different with the style of the offense. Yep. That would be it for me. We're taking one more break. When we're back, it's the last call. We got our Monday Night Football preview. Jets-Bills battle for the AFC East first place spot. Coming up right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. We're taking a look at the most bet player props on DraftKings for Monday Night Football, a board that is full of Jets. Yes, that is correct. #1 is Allen Lazard, alternate receiving yards, 25+. Garrett Wilson, same thing, 25+, which is minus 1,400, by the way. Breece Hall, alt rushing yards, is on this, as well as Breece Hall's rush attempts and Braylon Allen's rush attempts as well. That has moved, by the way, to 8.5 right now, Braylon Allen. So that has changed a lot.
This is America honoring you, Connor, by doing nothing but Jets bets.
But being very scared to actually believe in them.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson, 25+ receiving yards.
By the way,
minus
watch
1,400.
that. Yeah.
It's like 14-1 to get hurt.
Right.
Not
a
quite
good bet. Not a great bet.
What do you got for us, Jay?
So I have Josh Allen for us. He invests in your company. Josh Allen.
Yes, proud Fantasy Life investor. No, I need Josh Allen to beat George the Geek. I'm down 23 points because George the Geek had a bunch of stupid players just go off and off and off.
Sorry, he had Caleb Williams.
He did have Caleb Williams.
Chris
Godwin. Yeah, I mean, he had good players too.
Yep.
Anyway, so I need 23, I think, or 24 from Josh Allen today to come back and defeat him.
Okay, well, I need 202 passing yards from Josh Allen because his line is set at 201.5.
That's too low.
Well, it's just gone mad. Josh Allen averaged 253 passing yards per game last season. He played the Jets twice. He had 275 and 236 passing yards. I get that he was bad last week. I get that these receivers aren't getting open. But Josh Allen is the one player in football, if his receivers don't get open initially, well, he can run around and he can find ways to get them open. So I just think this line is it's just gone too far. Josh Allen goes over 201.5.
He gets Khalil Shakir back tonight as well.
Maybe.
I think so.
He will be questionable going into the game. They're wondering if he'll be limited in the way they use him. If Shakir is back tonight, I like the over. If he's not, I don't. I didn't see anything from this group of pass catchers last week without him, but I agree. I think Shakir will be back tonight, which gives you more hope.
It certainly does. In terms of my best bet here, I'm going Breece Hall, but I'm going over on the receiving yards. First off, I just feel like the firing of Robert Saleh, the demotion of Nathaniel Hackett, I think the team will play better. I think nowhere to go but up offensively for him as well. Sort of everyone's on notice. And Breece Hall, went over this number each of his first 3 games of the season. It's 25.5 receiving yards. I get it the last 2 games, but again, they fired a bunch of people. And it's a nice matchup as Buffalo has allowed the most receptions and receiving yards to opposing running backs. They've already allowed 5 different running backs to go over this number this year. So, yeah, Breece Hall, give me the over on 25.5 receiving yards.
I'm in line with what you're thinking, Matthew, so I'm going to take Braylon Allen's over rushing yards. That's 33.5. I like Breece in the pass game. I like Braylon on the ground. I think Jeff Ulbrich is going to come in and say, hey, I want to run the ball, but I want my 240-pound running back to get downhill in this game. We'll throw to Breece instead. The Bills have been brutal against running backs this year. I think both Breece and Braylon are viable in this game.
Okay. I like
completely agree.
So we take a look at Matthew's top players. Obviously, you're starting Josh Allen. You're still starting Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Is there anyone intriguing in this game, Matthew? Maybe for a flex spot if you're desperate. James Cook is expected to play, but he'll be banged up as well.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be the interesting thing is, could Ty Johnson suddenly get a little bit of run there? Could you see Curtis Samuel do something well if Shakir especially doesn't play? So we'll see there. It'll be interesting to see. Listen, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew Berry. We love you, Tampa Bay. Good luck tonight. Go Mets. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.